Hello, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned to the podcast over the November-December holiday madness. We are really trying our best to create content for you that will help buoy your spirit over the holidays, as well as those in your life who are trying to conceive. You can either share the episodes with them, or you can listen to them and have more insight as to how you can be a better support. This week's episode, we have one of my patients. She went through recurrent pregnancy loss, which is a concern that I went through as well. So it was a very emotional interview, one where we had a lot of shared insights. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I learned from it. I enjoyed the episode, but to be honest, I was getting emotional at certain points, and I don't typically do that. So there were no breakdowns, so don't fast forward to seeing me weep, because that still hasn't happened yet. Maybe 2025, who knows? But thank you so much for staying tuned. Please remember that every time that you leave a review or a rating, it bumps the podcast's visibility, which helps us get more guests and also more experts, which will help more people. So thank you so much to those of you who have already done that. It means the world. And stay tuned for a very meaningful episode with the lovely Victoria Forte. Okay, Ryan, here we go. See, that was a natural just inclination just to dive in.
It was. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm really glad, actually. I, most of the time, have to beg people, hey, would you be open to sharing your story? And they're like, let me contemplate this. Or people are very superstitious and they're like, maybe once I get past a certain point in my pregnancy, I'd be open to share.
Yeah.
And then recently people are like, I'm not sharing until this child is out of my body.
Yeah. I mean,
here we are. So
I can relate to that. Totally.
That's a perfect segue.
Yeah, exactly.
I was so grateful that you were willing and wanting, because the miscarriage story, it's interesting. I was at the gym this morning, and somebody I've been working out with for almost over a year, we were just discussing, like, you know, where we spent our days, and she figured out what I actually do because she started to follow me on social.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, I've had 6 miscarriages. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, 4 before my son and then 2 after. And I was like, well, what kind of investigative, diagnostics have you done?
Yeah.
She was like, oh, nothing. They just said it was like par for the course. And it made me realize how many people are affected by recurrent loss.
Yeah.
And they don't even know that it can be fixed because they think that it's just the cards that they've been dealt.
Yeah.
So that's why these stories are so powerful. And that being said, let's start with yours.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share because I remember finding so much just hope, and your fertility stories, the actual Instagram account made me feel so much less alone. Like, I would look forward to be like, hey, it was part 1 of 5. I'm like, when is this woman going to post part 2? Like, I need, I need this for my mental health to feel less alone, and your podcast. So, I kind of told myself, once this baby is out of me, I want to be able to give back and share my story, and hopefully make somebody listening to this podcast feel less alone, and maybe find something that they can relate to. So
yeah, because I remember during our initial appointment, this is, not that big of a deal. Like, this will be fine.
Yeah.
Like, recurrent loss is my favorite.
That I remember you were like, this is going to be easy.
But you
are my favorite kind of patient, recurrent loss. And I'm sitting there being like, I am broken. Like,
what is wrong with this
But
woman?
also, I went home and I said to my husband, I was like, man, like, for the first time, I am hopeful. Like, that was the kind of energy that I needed for someone to be like, you are going to have another baby. I was like,
no doubt.
Okay, I believe you.
Yes. And so if this podcast, can help anyone who are in the same space that you were when you came in for that initial, where you genuinely were, I think, more on the I don't think this will happen side of things.
Yep.
Than this will happen. Then we've done our job.
Totally.
Let's start with that initial.
Okay.
Tell us what had been happening to you.
So I came to you after, I think I was on your wait list for like 8 months. Something crazy. So
Jesus.
I waited, but I came to you after my third loss was when I went on your wait list after my second and then got in after my third. I think maybe because I was also harassing poor Carmela. I was like, look,
she loves it.
I was like, I need to know if working with Anne is realistic for me. And she was like, she just had a cancellation. Like, I'm going to get you in. So God love that woman. But I came to you after my third loss in a secondary infertility standpoint. So I have a daughter. She was born in March 2021, uncomplicated pregnancy. I know everyone hates to hear this, but got pregnant very easily with her. And it was like rose-colored glasses from start to finish. It was an amazing pregnancy. I loved it. And so when we decided to start trying for a second, candidly, I kind of expected it to be the same experience as my first one. Like, why would it not be? And I'm very type A. So it was, I was peeing on the ovulation test and I was like, I got this. Like, we had it down to a science the first time we got pregnant. We wanted our kids to hopefully be 2 years apart from an age gap perspective. So everything was planned and I got pregnant. So I was like, all right, life is going according to plan. Like, here we go. This is amazing. And I had zero inkling or like, it hit me like an absolute train when, my story kind of starts and unfolds because all 3 of my losses were miscarriages. So
you had no idea. Did you, when you were in that space, did you have friends who had had miscarriages or was it like a completely foreign?
It was pretty foreign. Like I had known of a few people in my life who had one loss, but in my immediate close group of friends, it kind of was like everyone you peed on a stick and 9 months later you had a baby.
Right.
And so obviously, that, the statistics, that it happens to people. I think with my first experience, having it gone so smooth, that it could happen, but you kind of are naive to the fact that, is it going to happen to me? Probably not, based on my track record, which is, now hindsight, I'm like, wow, you were so naive. But at the time, I had no reason to think that it would go any way other than how I wanted it to. So it was about almost 2 years ago now. I shouldn't say it would have been. I know exactly the date. I don't know why I'm pretending. So it was December 20th and I was going for my 12-week ultrasound and standard. I was like, you know what? Like my husband didn't come with me. There was no need. Did not ever anticipate that anything would go wrong because I was still feeling nauseous. I was bloated. I was having, all of the symptoms that would suggest that my pregnancy was still progressing. I was almost 13 weeks and go into the ultrasound room. And the technician was like, are you sure you haven't had any bleeding? And I remember in that moment, I kind of knew that something was not right and that I probably wasn't going to be going home with a cute little ultrasound picture to put on my fridge. And sure enough, they didn't really tell you much. The technicians were like, we can't really say, but don't go to the blood work. Because, at the 12-week ultrasound, you go for blood work afterwards. And she was like, just like wait outside. Don't go to your blood work appointment. And obviously, I knew that things were not okay. And my midwife called me and sure enough was like, I'm so sorry, but there was no heartbeat. And our baby was measuring about 9 weeks and I was almost 13. It had been almost 4 weeks since our embryo, fetus, baby, whatever you want to call it, left us, which was mortifying. I was like, I have been, touching my belly and feeling pregnant. And for the last month, there's been nothing alive inside of me. And the first one was, it was absolutely, it was devastating. I was devastated. I didn't even know what to do. I felt every emotion you can possibly think of. One of the strongest ones, honestly, was shame and almost embarrassment, which everyone tells you it's not your fault. You shouldn't feel shameful. But I know I'm probably not the only person that can relate to this. Like, you somehow go to that place. It was like, what did I do wrong? You start to think back, like, did I drink too much coffee? Did I, like maybe did I eat a piece of cheese that, I shouldn't have had, right? Like, you kind of start to recount what the last month looked like.
Yeah. All of a sudden, everything is a lot more fragile. And you start thinking that everything's a lot more fragile.
Yeah.
When it's not. It's not that.
Yeah.
Not anything that you did.
Well, it went from us planning how we were going to share with extended family and friends at Christmas to me having to make a decision about how I was going to medically induce the removal of this baby from my body.
That's really interesting, that entire scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to so much that going back to the weeks where they weren't there, but I thought that they were,
mm-hmm.
and completely losing trust in my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Because how did I not realize?
Yep.
How did I have no idea?
Mm-hmm.
Was I making these symptoms up?
Yeah.
But of course not.
Mm-hmm.
HCG is still present in your body.
Yep.
But you start to really question
mm-hmm.
your capacity to know what is going on in your body. I had a miscarriage as well, and I felt gross. I wanted them out so badly.
Yep.
And I looking back, I'm not, now I'm a little bit less emotionally attached, but at the time I wanted them out so badly that I actually went to the ER complaining of pain and fever so that they would get me a D&C.
Yeah.
Because there was no way I was going to be able to wait around for X more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband at the time thought I was nuts. Because the doctor was very much like, yeah, you take these pills, wait at home. It's like a period. He's like, why would you opt for surgery when you could just wait for your period?
How misinformed.
Yes. Anyway, sorry.
No, I completely can relate to that because that's a big thing. And I've always been someone who, I've always felt kind of very in touch with my body, and given my first experience and first pregnancy, like I just, you feel like you can kind of trust that the outcome is going to be what you expect it to be. And so when that becomes ripped away from you, you start to question everything. And I think that's some of where the shame and embarrassment and, I was feeling like I was letting people down and having to untell all of the people that we told was one of the worst parts for me. It's like, okay, who did we tell? How am I going to break this news to them? And you start like calling people up and it's like, hey, remember how we thought that I was expecting a baby? Like, I'm not anymore, which was terrible because like I said, there wasn't a lot of people in my life who had experienced loss. And so all of our friends and family, they were there for us in the best way that they could be, right? But you and I know that unless you've gone through it yourself, it's really hard to relate and like truly understand what someone's going through, what the right things to say are. So it was hard. It was isolating. And then I actually ended up making the decision to take the misoprostol. Is as the method because I was terrified of having a D&C. I was like, if I can avoid this, I want to avoid it. And they did not recommend me waiting it out because it had already been 4 weeks and my body was not recognizing and doing its thing. And they were like, you might be at a risk of infection. Like, we would recommend D&C or you go the pill route. Does not feel like a period.
Does not feel like a period.
And I was like, okay, I just want this to be behind me. I want to move on. I kind of felt like, okay, I can accept that this was my 1 in 4 moment. You know, like I had my loss. I've kind of gotten it out of the way. That sounds so terrible to say, but like we're putting it behind me. I know I've had a baby before. We're going to just move on and keep trying. So did the first round of the pills, let's just call them, so I don't have to keep pronouncing it over and over again. So we did the first round of that on Christmas.
On Christmas.
I know. But it's because I just was like, you know what? I can't wait. Like how long, what's the right day? Like we got through the holidays with our families and then we were home together on our own on Christmas. And I was like, I got it. We have to move on. It has to be behind us. And it was awful. It was an awful night. It was super painful. It was emotionally hard. And it turned out that it didn't work in the sense of getting everything out. As I've learned, seems to be pretty common.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks later, we found that there was still some tissue, not a ton, like most of it did pass, but there was some tissue. And so again, I was like, okay, we'll try one more round of the pills to see if that can complete it. It didn't. So another 2 weeks pass. I'm still bleeding. And I actually went to the hospital for my checkup appointment for them to see how much tissue, if there was tissue. And I'll never forget this. It was actually crazy that I was at the hospital. They called me in. I stood up to go into my appointment and I just started like gushing blood in the hospital about a month after, or I guess, yeah, about a month after the initial dose of the pills. And I kind of said to her, I was like, I can't come into your office. I need to go to the bathroom. Like, I don't know what is happening to me. And I passed 3 clots, like bigger than a golf ball. Like they were large. Like I took a picture of them in the bathroom and I went out and was like, this is coming out of me. Like it's been a month since I took the pills the first time. Something is not right. Something is wrong. And so they took me right away to give me an ultrasound and they were like, your body is trying so hard to get, it was the size of a quarter, the tissue that was left in there.
Yeah.
They're like, your body is trying so hard to get this out. You're not leaving the hospital today, essentially. Like we're going to have you go in for a D&C, which what I wanted to avoid. But I just at that point was like, I need this behind me. It's been over a month. It is so far dragged out physically, mentally, emotionally. It's so hard to move on when every day you go to the bathroom and it's a reminder of what is happening to you. So we proceeded with the D&C and that was that for miscarriage 1.
It's so rough. It's almost like when you labor, and then you end up getting that C-section as opposed to just right from the get-go.
Yeah.
It's a totally different experience.
We're going to have a conversation about that too.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So after that first loss, I was hell-bent. I was like, I'm just going to get pregnant again. The only way that I'm going to heal is the very thing that just broke me. But that is what needs to happen. I need to get my period back. My HCG needs to drop low enough so that I can get it back and try again. And at this point, I mean, I just was speaking with my doctor and she kind of was like, there's no reason to think that anything would be wrong. Start trying again once you get your period. So we did. I got pregnant. And I remember peeing on the stick, getting the positive, and being like, thank God this absolute shitstorm is behind me. And I remember being like, also thank God this baby is due in December 2023, which means it's still a 2-year age gap.
You are
I know.
a forward-thinking lady.
I know. But I was
You still had your calendar.
Literally, I was like, okay, like, we went through this really hard time, but we got through it. I got pregnant again and we're squeezing this baby
Timeline on point.
Exactly. That was literally where my brain went. It was like, okay, now I can move on. Now I can start healing.
For the first baby, did they have you collect any of the tissue so that you could discern?
No.
Cause? No. Okay.
They did not. So for the first 2 losses, actually, we did not. So we have no idea why. So the second, I guess, third pregnancy, second loss, we went to the first, I wanted to go for an early ultrasound naturally because I was unhinged
Traumatized.
with
Yes.
feeling stress and worry. And I know people listening to this will be able to relate the amount of pregnancy tests that I took to see if the line was getting darker.
Even though that wasn't even the issue with the first pregnancy.
No,
Yes.
it was wild. But
Well, it's
I
the
needed
only
it.
thing that you have to
Yeah.
discern whether this is even real.
Yeah. So we went for an early ultrasound, and at that ultrasound, I was supposed to be about 6 weeks, was measuring a little bit behind, no heartbeat, but they kind of were like, dates could be off. You're still really early. Come back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And so we went back 2 weeks later, and sure enough, there was no
Heartbeat.
Yeah, no heartbeat, no real growth. And so we had a similar conversation around, okay, do we wait it out? Do we have another DNC? Of course, I was like, I don't really want to take the pills again because my last experience was so traumatic. But in this case, my body did its thing and I actually started bleeding 2 days later and was able to pass all of the tissue this time
Yeah.
on my own.
One of the complications of getting DNCs that people don't realize is Asherman's, which is where your uterus actually heals either entirely shut or in portions of the uterus. It will heal together. So if that becomes like well enough fused that surgery won't fix it, because it's a hard surgery, you actually physically cannot carry. So I have had a lot of patients who have had Asherman's, their lining does not thicken post-surgery to correct it. In some cases, it's so severe that they are now not even getting periods and will have to have a surrogate. And I have one clinic in particular where it's always recommended. So patients will have a miscarriage before they're even given the option of the pills. It's immediately like, okay, we're going to get you in for a DNC, which at the time feels kind.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, thank God they're being compassionate. But hindsight, when these people aren't given the full run of what can go wrong with a DNC.
Yeah.
I've had one DNC and then I had 4 miscarriages where it was a bloodbath. But one I would go through again and again.
Yeah.
In order to not have to worry about scarring.
For sure. Yeah.
So I'm like very grateful and proud that you, through that trauma and having it be so fresh, still opted for the misoprostol.
Yeah. I had done a lot of reading, research. Like I felt like I was in fight or flight. And when I feel like I'm in that space, what makes me feel better is an obsessive amount of Googling, which not always great. But in this case, I was like, I just want to be educated about what's going on. What are my options? What are the risks? I know I am hell-bent on having another baby. And so how do I make the best decisions that will hopefully affect or impact that outcome down the road? And so that was one of those decisions. And it was after the second loss, which it didn't hit as hard as the first one. I was devastated, don't get me wrong, but it was kind of like, I think I was more in shock.
Yes.
I did not think it was going to happen to me 2 times in a row. I knew of one person in my life who it had happened to them more than once in a row. And I kind of was like, holy shit, like what is wrong with me? Like what is going on? And so I immediately booked an appointment at a fertility clinic. I was like, I'm not waiting. I'm not trying again until I get some answers here. Cause like I can't go through this heartbreak again.
Yes.
So we did that. We went to a fertility clinic. We did the workup that they had us do. My husband had his sperm tested. I had a sono histogram and everything came back great.
When they did his sperm test, did they do the DNA frag?
Yeah.
Bless.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And I think it was 8% or something like that.
Very good.
Yeah. He got a glowing review.
Gracious.
Yeah. And And for me too, it was like, hey, like everything looks great. There's no real reason here to suggest that anything is wrong. So keep trying. And, you're kind of in the clinic now. So we'll monitor this pregnancy if you get pregnant again very closely, and we'll go from there. So for me, I was like, okay, like, we did the blood work, we did the testing, like we looked in my uterus, like we confirmed that, everything looked okay. Because for me, my first delivery was an unplanned C-section. And so I was worried about scar tissue, right? You hear about that. Like I was like, maybe there's something going on in my uterus that we don't know about that's impacting.
Yeah, inadequate blood flow.
Yeah, exactly. That was not the case. So basically right away. So the first loss was December 2022. Second loss was April 2023. And then I was pregnant again, July 2023. So pretty shortly after. And I remember being like, okay, we're with a fertility clinic. We're going to be following this really, really closely. I feel good about this. Like my body clearly is trying really hard to, be pregnant and have a baby. Like I'm hopeful that if something goes wrong, we'll be able to maybe, I don't know, intervene or do something because we're being followed.
Yes.
But we had done nothing different. So no interventions. It was spontaneous conception with I wasn't taking progesterone or aspirin or anything like that. And we started getting ultrasounds as of 6 weeks. We saw the heartbeat at 6 weeks and 7 weeks and 8 weeks. And I was like, all right, like I'm feeling hopeful. Like this is going to be the one. And sure enough, at the 9-week ultrasound, there was no heartbeat. And so that one was probably the most devastating for me. It was the realization that like something is wrong, and I am going to be the one that has to figure out how we figure out what's wrong. I did not feel like...
Yeah, because you were at a clinic.
Mm-hmm.
So
they did the basic
care
testing
that you were
mm-hmm.
hoping to get had
mm-hmm.
already been done.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
now it's up to you.
Yeah. And I think we went into, right away, they're like, we're so sorry, but we're going to have you talk to your reproductive endocrinologist who happened to be in that day. And the moment where I was like, I got to get the hell out of this clinic, he came in the room and he's like, yo, I'm so sorry. There's no heartbeat. It's all of your test work, all your blood work has come back totally fine. It's probably genetic, even though we did the karyotyping and it all came back normal. Probably genetic. Just keep trying. And he goes, is this your first miscarriage? This is literally the doctor that I had multiple appointments with. And I just broke down. I was like, did you just ask me if this is my first miscarriage? Like, this is my third.
I don't understand. The file is not even long.
You must have not even opened it when you came into the room.
It.
Yeah.
I'm an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
I look at my files before I see you guys.
You remembered my birthday when I walked in here.
5 seconds.
Yeah,
I don't get it though. I don't get it.
So it was then, and I was like, okay. I felt in a way, and maybe this sounds kind of bad to say, but I felt like at that clinic, because I was not a candidate for IVF, because I did not have any challenges getting pregnant and my karyotyping was normal, that they just kind of were like, no one was invested in helping me.
No one was invested in you because you couldn't make a significant investment in them.
Yeah.
Because there was no need.
With this loss, I was like, I cannot go through another, call it natural miscarriage. Like it's so traumatic. It's so painful. Like I can't, I don't think I have it in me. Like I want to get a DNC and I want to get it as fast as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we opted to actually do it within the clinic because they could do it with an ultrasound and they said it was gentler. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. And I wanted the genetic testing.
Yes.
So we did that, and sure enough, it came back genetically normal, which was another really hard pill for me to swallow because it kind of confirmed my fears that it's not you, it's me. basically. It was like, the baby was genetically normal. Something is not normal with me. My body is doing something that is not hanging on to these pregnancies.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
Well,
as
hard.
a woman, you're like, my body is supposed to do this.
And it's confusing for the clinicians because it was a secondary
Yes.
scenario.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it infertility, but it was a secondary
Yes.
loss, like RPL scenario. And so the normal things that they would go to, like clotting, there's this misconception that you can't develop a clotting disorder, which is so interesting because so many autoimmune diseases are clotting disorders.
Yep.
But if you had a normal pregnancy, it's thought that there's nothing necessarily wrong with you unless it's physiological, like structural.
Yeah.
And they'd already confirmed structurally there was nothing going on.
Well, they wanted me to do a hysteroscopy, remember?
Oh.
And I said to you, and you were like, do not do that.
Jokes.
Like, why would you do that?
Jokes.
I was like, oh, you want more money.
And madness, though, because you were holding on to the pregnancies. It wasn't a matter of scar tissue impeding growth.
Yeah.
Your body was holding on.
Yeah.
So that made no sense.
No. No, it didn't. So after that and kind of that realization, I did my own research. The amount of times I was on your Instagram page was insane. Just like reading stories, reading all your highlights, like trying to educate myself on what could be going on. And I remember I saw a story and it was somebody who their reason for loss was immune factors. And I was like, I think this could be me. Like I want to explore this, and only a certain amount of clinics in Toronto will
look into that.
Believe in it. Believe in that. Because I brought it up to the first clinic I was at. I remember saying, and I asked, I was like, can I try aspirin? Can I go on blood thinners? And my doctor at the time was like, you don't need any of that. Like, why would we do that? You're just putting yourself at risk. Like if you get in a car accident, like you might bleed out. I was like, okay, well,
yeah.
Like
if I get into a car accident, I might bleed out anyway. Sir.
Exactly. So I went on your wait list after the second loss. And then after the third loss, I went on the wait list of this other fertility clinic that I know did immune testing and immune treating. So I remember I got in to see you, it was September of last year, so September 2023. And I basically like trauma dumped on you, being like, here is my whole history. This is what I think is wrong. Like, help me. Like, do you agree? What do you think I should do? And I remember you were happy that I was going to see this doctor, or on the wait list to see this doctor, and suspected that it was an immune
/ clotting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So got into this new clinic. We found out that I did have, my thyroid was elevated. I had anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, and I tested positive for the MTHFR genetic mutation. All of which I was like, how did we not find any of this at the first clinic? Like, how is this missed? And again, that doctor at this new clinic had the same energy that you had. And he was like, you are 100% going to have another baby. We are going to solve this. I've got this. Like, here's a plan. Here's what we're going to do differently. And then working with you, similarly, you're like, okay, here are the supplements I want you to go on. Here's a diet I want you to follow. We have a plan. I need you to give me, I think you told me to not try for, I think 3 months. Yeah. Which I was like, I'm sorry, what? That feels like a long time.
That's all I need.
But it was like, okay, like I've already had these 3 losses. I am in pain and I want to solve this problem. And so if 3 months of like trying things differently is what it's going to take, then like that's what we're going to do.
Well, especially because you got pregnant very easily, which is positive in so many ways, but also hard.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think I cautioned you at the beginning of your first trying month was you may not get pregnant right away. It does not mean that now there's something else wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the things that is shared amongst my other RPL patients who get pregnant fairly easily is once they have finished their like remedial time, they expect, okay, this first month we're going to go. Like, this will be it. And they've done all their calculations of when their due date will be, astrological signs. And when they get their period, they're like, now I'm infertile.
Yes.
Not so.
No. And that was me.
That was you.
The first month, right? Like because we did this gig, which now I'm forgetting what it stands for. The
subcutaneous IG.
Yeah.
Which is just an injection as opposed to like an infusion, like in a drip.
Yeah, exactly. So we did that to address some of the immune stuff. And I had to be doing that for a minimum of a month before we could start trying again. And I remember it was a month and I was like, okay, we can try again. This is going to be the month. And I got my period. I was like, what? Oh my God. Like, is this now impacting my ability to get pregnant? Right? Like you start to doubt everything all the time, basically, when you're on this journey. It's so all consuming. It's so easy to just overthink every decision that you're making, everything you're going through. But then sure enough, the following month, we tried and got pregnant, and we had a plan in place, right? It was, we're going on blood thinners. I was going to try progesterone, right? It was kind of kitchen sink, but like with science to back it up, right? With like,
it was unique to your needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So like true kitchen sink is, we don't know what your needs are.
Yeah.
So you were going to take everything.
Yeah.
Whereas you just had a lot that you needed to do to address a cornucopia of needs.
Yeah.
So it was a good plan.
Yeah. Beyond all the supplements, it truly, like it was, and I felt so in control.
Yes.
Like I think that was the biggest thing for me, was feeling like there's actually something that we're doing different.
Yes.
There is a plan that is giving me hope and purpose to stick to, between the supplements and, once I got the positive, the injections and the progesterone and the aspirin, and I was taking thyroid medication now every day to kind of get that under control. So there was a lot that went into it. I was not eating grains, and I'm following your plan to a T, because it was like, okay.
You were not inflamed. You were a very good patient.
I was not inflamed.
Do you
remember your
autoimmune protocol was on point.
Oh my God. And I remember I had a trip to Paris in May. Do you remember this? And I literally messaged you.
You were like, can I have a croissant? Can I have a croissant?
But I
was like, I said yeah.
I know you did. But it's because when you're in the journey, you're I was convinced that if I had
this was going to be it.
Gluten, I was going to have a miscarriage.
Yeah. No. 80-20, baby.
I know, but that was just how consumed you become with all of it. I was terrified. But
especially in France.
I know.
Like if one is going to have a croissant.
I know. But
that's
it's so
where.
Silly. After I was like, did I really just message Anne and ask her if I could have a croissant in Paris?
I had a chap the other day that I treat who asked me if he could have a crispy mini. I was like, do those still exist? And no,
everyone has their vices.
Are you in some sort of country that specializes in crispy minis? Are you in
Special
America?
Flavor?
No. Get out of here.
That's funny.
He was serious and heartbroken.
But again, he
was like, what do I do? I was like, get some almonds.
Yeah.
Crush them.
Yeah.
Get some eggs, beat them, make yourself some crackers. He was like, are you nuts?
Crispy minis.
I was like, well, you can buy the flour. Just buy some flour.
Yeah. Oh my God. So yeah, we finally had that plan that worked for us and ended in a successful pregnancy.
Yes. And from an acupuncture standpoint, for any of the acupuncturists that are listening to the podcast, we also were religious about spleen 10 for moving blood
Mm-hmm.
and stomach 36 for reducing cytokines. And those 2 points I've had other acupuncturists where I've given points to them and they're like, oh, I'm too nervous to do those points. Those are not ideal. Those are contraindicated in pregnancy because they move blood too much. They're too strong.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your patient. So those 2 points for you were really important.
Mm-hmm.
And in a 2020 study, Harvard did, they were trying to figure out why are all of these COVID patients in China having a reduction of cytokines and getting better from subsequent infections post their COVID infection. And the reason was that they were incorporating acupuncture, specifically this stomach 36 point. And so they did this animal-based study, but found that the mice that they had put into like a cytokine storm scenario survived when they gave them this point. Whereas when they used other points on, it was something like 3,000 mice, they died from the same cytokine storm. So it's a really important and impactful point. And I think if more acupuncturists were less concerned about following old trends and old beliefs and instead embraced and really used the points as they're intended with an understanding of Western medicine and what your patient is actually being treated for, you would have more success from an alternative standpoint as well. Because I have a lot of patients that come from another fertility clinic that also focuses on immune, where they can't get cytokines down. And the only things that I'm doing are like diet and these points specifically. Actually, for that one, it's more like stomach 36 and liver 8. But I feel like more professionals, if they really embraced helping the patient and seeing like the outcome here is a baby. You know, like I understand you're super stressed about liability. Because that's what the other fertility clinics, that's why they're not looking into, immune therapies and really digging for these patients, because they know, IVF is like pretty standard and no one's going to blame them if it doesn't go well. Whereas this is still like unknown.
Well, remember, practical magic. That's what they said to me.
But it works. And if you had continuously just done either spontaneous conception or even IVF and had not addressed these other factors, I don't know if we'd be here.
No, I do not think we would be here. And I feel like you were the captain of my care team.
No, you were the captain of your care team.
We were co-captains.
You were very brave, because a lot of the time people are like, should I be taking this much fish oil? I'm like, yes, you should be taking this much fish oil. You didn't, at no point were you like, are you sure these supplements are safe? Like,
no, oh no.
Show me the studies.
I know.
was like,
I'd go home and I'd be like, this is what I'm doing. And I remember my husband kind of was like, you are taking like 20 pills a day. I was like, Anne tells me to jump and I just say how high, like whatever. I have full trust in you. And I just knew that for the first time when I met with you in our first kind of consult, I was like, okay, she cares. She wants to help me. And like genuinely for the first time, I felt like someone was listening to what I was saying.
You were
and
very
thinking
like
about it.
Evidence-based. So if I explain the evidence, you embraced it. I still to this day have patients where their doctors are telling them, oh, I don't know if that is safe. I don't know if you should be doing that. And I'm like, oh my God, it's been a year. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
You don't know if aspirin is safe. This is insane. Okay, let's have another miscarriage. This is making me crazy.
It is. And it gets to a point too where like when you're the patient, I would be going insane if I was doing nothing different every single time.
You have personal accountability though. And I feel like that's missing. People are still of the belief that if your doctor isn't concerned, you shouldn't be either. Which
you should have blind faith, blind trust. When
they don't want to be like a doctor Googler. Well, I love it when patients come and they have questions. You should have questions. You should know why you're doing something. You were the best at that. It was great.
I was a bit of a psycho when it came to Google, but I just, made me feel in control and like I was a part of what was going on and I could advocate for myself in situations where you couldn't be in all the appointments with me.
No.
I would have loved it, but
your doctors wouldn't have.
To be able to
annoying.
advocate and feel like I kind of knew the research behind and the studies behind why I was doing what I was doing to get the outcome that I so desperately wanted.
Yeah.
And that we ultimately ended up getting.
It makes you a better mom too. Like when you know to advocate for yourself, you become very good at advocating for your children and helping them navigate the world.
Yeah.
Especially now because
oh God, yeah.
The assumption that people have your best interest. I've lived under that assumption for the last 38 years. And then this last year has been just so illuminating. You know, from a fertility standpoint, kind of broke me. Like how many patients were like misled. I don't know if it's because of the podcast. I've just had so many more DMs.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Care.
Yeah.
But
I mean, everyone's out for themselves as much as that shouldn't be the case. But, you know, if you're not the captain of your own team and kind of your own advocate and finding a team that works for you, then like probably nobody is.
Do you want to give a shout out to your doctor that
Do you want me to? I don't know if we want to like name names.
Yeah, we can name names.
I was like being very
I love
like,
it.
This doctor.
They named names. We can name names about that because I want more people to find the doctors who are helping patients, and I want them to get a spotlight.
Sure. It is. I went to see Dr. Ziniku at Tripod.
Fred!
Fertility. Yes. Good old Fred.
We love him.
We love that guy. Oh, he's great. And again, similar to you, he had that energy where it was like, you got this. Like, why are we even doubting this? Like, there were times where I was like, are we sure? He's like, we've got this. And even if you or him had any sort of doubt in the back of your mind, like, hey, this might not work, you didn't let it show, which for me did so much for my own mental state and mental health. And I think that a really underrated but powerful tool in the toolkit of navigating loss and infertility is hope. And it's one of the first things that go.
Yeah.
When you struggle, you know, over and over again, it's easy to be like,
and trust and
exactly. Like
and others.
I don't know if I got this, but when you have people that you trust telling you like, hey, no, you've got this, stay the path.
Yeah.
It made the biggest difference for me. And I think during my successful pregnancy, it was a hard pregnancy mentally. Like my first successful pregnancy with my oldest daughter and my most recent pregnancy, night and day pregnancies. Like pregnancy after loss is a beast, is no joke. But without the hope and trust of the practitioners that you're working with, it would have been that much harder.
The key, I truly didn't have any doubts in the back of my mind because obviously there's always an element of unknown to anything.
Yeah.
Every
always.
single day.
Yeah.
But if you have the puzzle 99% put together, you're confident. And I think that's where other practitioners are failing because they have the puzzle 50% figured out and they hope to figure out the rest along the way.
Yeah.
You cannot go into anyone's fertility that way.
Yeah.
You need to know why you're doing anything and you need to be very specific about it. Alternative and allopathic.
Yeah.
Both. And I think a lot of the time, like alternative health practitioners are very much like, oh, I'm just, you know, on the side and I'm just a little support. Here's a prenatal.
Yeah.
No.
Here's some iron.
You're just as important.
Yeah.
And,
oh my God.
Like you've got to know your stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't know your stuff, don't say you specialize in it. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Refer.
Yeah.
Someone comes to me for allergies, get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'll kick you out.
As you should, you know, like it's I felt just an immediate trust and support from you. And like, I genuinely do not think that my daughter would be here if it wasn't for you.
Fred.
And Fred. God love you, Fred.
Love him.
But truly, like, you know, it and me.
Honestly, mostly you. Mostly you.
Yeah.
99%.
Yeah.
Your husband's like the
with
0.5.
the one, yeah.
And then
He
Fred
helped.
and I are
He contributed.
0.5 as a combined.
Yeah.
0.25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a journey, but we made it through.
You made it through.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening this week. Every time that you listen, you share, you rate, you review, it helps boost our show, which not only gives me the motivation to carry forth, but also helps attract new guests with new information. So thank you so much. Please don't forget, again, rate, review, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll talk to you soon on the next episode.